Hello everybody and welcome to our Dremio Showcase, 2 hours of executive thought leadership on the latest data trends and predictions for 2024. We've got plenty to look forward to here today as we reflect on yet another groundbreaking year in the world of data and technology. Every organization today is looking at how they can harness their data to empower their business and improve overall decision making. But have you ever stopped and just thought about how much data is being produced each and every day? Well, I've got some interesting stats for you on this here. Forbes, first and foremost, estimates the volume of data generated globally between 2010 and 2020 increased by about 5,000%. And perhaps you won't be surprised to hear that that trajectory only looks set to continue. In fact, in terms of global market revenue, big data analytics was valued at around $15 billion back in 2019, just 4 years ago. But since then, the market has achieved a compound annual growth rate of almost 30%, which means it's on track to reach over $68 billion by 2025. So from $15 billion 4 years ago to nearly $70 billion in 2 years. Of course, another emerging trend that we have seen from organizations is a growing investment in data lakehouse architecture. Of course, something we'll be hearing about here today. According to Dremio's State of the Data Lakehouse report released just last month, the majority of respondents indicated that more than half of all analytics will be on the data lakehouse within the next 3 years. 42%, meanwhile, have moved from a cloud data warehouse to the data lakehouse, more than any other environment, which is quite telling in itself. Whilst 81% of respondents said they are using a data lakehouse to support data scientists build and improve AI models and applications. Now today, we'll be exploring some of these findings as well as some of the key challenges facing companies like yours, everything from cost right through to data governance, overcoming silos and reducing dashboard fatigue. My name's Alex Wood. I'm your host for today's event with Dremio, and very shortly I'll be telling you about some of the live in-person sessions that we'll be bringing you across this morning. But first, here's a short video guide to ensure you get the very most from your time with us.
Here are 3 ways to get the best event experience with us. 1. Please make sure you are on mute, but turn your cameras on. This is an interactive virtual event, and like any event, being able to see their audience really helps our speakers. 2. Full screen is a much sharper image than minimized screen. 3. Please change your name on our platform to your first name, last name, and company name. This helps our event producers find you, both for your chosen sessions and when you want to ask a question. Speaking of which, our events become really valuable when you get involved. So, join the conversation. Taking part could not be easier. Just raise your virtual hand or put a question into the chat. We can even bring you up on stage. Our producers are always on hand to help.
Yes, and it really is that easy to get involved with us here today. And of course, our producer, Carl's going to be keeping an eye on things in the chat section as well. So do share your comments, your thoughts, and your questions with us. But now, let's take a look at our agenda for today's showcase. In just a few minutes' time, we'll kick things off with an opening keynote from Dremio CEO Sendur Sellakumar. He's going to set the scene for us and provide some context to those findings I shared from the State of the Data Lakehouse report a little bit earlier on. Then it'll be on to our second session, our analyst session with Mike Ferguson, who is the CEO of Intelligent Business Strategies. And Mike's going to join us here in the studio as we learn about some of the best practices being implemented by leading companies as they find ways of balancing a reduced cost while increasing adoption and maturity. After Mike's session, we'll then move on to our panel, where I'll be joined once again by Sendur, Mike, and Mark Sear from Maersk as we explore their predictions for 2024. We'll ask each of our panelists to share some of their thoughts on some of the new, exciting, emerging trends in data, and we'll also be opening this session up for audience Q&A, so please do make use of that chat section if you would like to submit a question for any of our speakers here today. And then, in our final session of this Dremio Showcase, panelist Mark is going to stay with us for a deep dive into the complicated, challenging world that is supply chain. So lots to look forward to here today as part of this event. And I'm delighted, as I say, to kick things off now in our opening keynote session with Dremio CEO Sendur Sellakumar, who joins us live in the studio first and foremost. Sendur, welcome here into our lovely studios. Thank you very much for joining us. How are you?
I'm good. I appreciate you having me here.
No, absolutely. You've got a presentation that we're going to get into very shortly, but in a nutshell, it's been an exciting year for Dremio, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. It has. We've got great customers, and of course, hopefully future customers as well, as sort of growing our business. We're very happy. You know, we are a customer-driven organization at the end of the day, and so as being a data lakehouse provider to those customers, both in the cloud as well as on premises, it's been a fun journey, and excited for the years to come.
Fantastic. Well, look, let's get into it, shall we? We're going to be hearing, of course, about the report that was released just last month. So, folks watching along, as I've said already, any thoughts, comments, questions, anything at all, whilst we have Sendur here with us today, do get them in, and we'll bring you in at the appropriate points a little bit later on. But all being well, Sendur, we've got your presentation deck ready. So there it is. In fact, we can see it here in the studio. So let's hand things over to you. Take us away.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ox. Well, thanks everyone for joining today. My name is Sendur Sellakumar. I'm CEO here at Dremio. Very excited to be here with you today to talk about both Dremio as well as the data trends and predictions for 2024. Now, predictions come from data ultimately, and so let's start with that. We've had hundreds of conversations this year with customers and prospects, talking to CDOs, CIOs, and data practitioners. And there's been a common theme across a lot of them, which is they're all seeking this analytics nirvana. And what does this nirvana entail? It's really three major steps. The first is they want to drive data-driven organizations. And what does that mean? Well, that means users running queries, analyzing data in a secure, governed environment with, of course, right quality of data involved. Once you have that, then users say, well, I want to get those insights faster. And so, yes, they can run more queries, but that's not the nirvana. The nirvana is, I want to get to business outcomes and decisions faster, and they want to get to insights faster. We call that lowering your mean time to insight, or MTTI. Now, you've got queries, you've got data adoption happening, you then have faster insights happening, but that has to happen in the context of massive data volume growth, but certainly not budgets growing that fast. So lowering the cost of analytics is equally as important, because you can't have that be a runaway thing. So those are the trends that we are seeing and that nirvana balance that customers are trying to drive to. But unfortunately, historical data infrastructure has been challenged to achieve these outcomes. And it's not surprising, given the paradigm that's been the case for decades, which is that you've got transactional systems, such as ERPs, SaaS applications, et cetera, going over, with that data going over ETL pipelines to some centralized storage. 10, 15 years ago, that was network-attached storage. Today, that's object storage. And then from there, ETLing further into a data warehouse. And from there, extracting or cubes over to various clients, whether they be BI clients or what have you. And so this chain existed 10, 15 years ago. It still exists to this day for a lot of organizations. And what that means is you've got a lot of brittle ETL pipelines everywhere. Now, certainly there's new vendors that have helped advance this further, but the fundamental physics are the same. But you take that model and that paradigm, and on top of that, you add in where we sit today, which are data engineers dealing with an ever-increasing volume of data, which now means they're dealing with more complex data platforms to manage, and yet an ever-increasing amount of data operations as well. So this complexity is created. But users, to be sure, don't care about that. What they care about is, I want my answer faster, more accurate, and they want to be unshackled to operate, to be able to make business decisions quickly, pivot on those decisions, and leverage the data. So what's been happening? Well, the first major simplification, of course, is the lakehouse. Okay? That lakehouse is this notion that we have, next slide please, is a notion that we have a simplification in that first step. So what does that mean? That means that we take a portion and shift left the analytics, which is merging this concept of a data lake and a data warehouse to be one, a common data lakehouse. No more ETL to the data warehouse. You access all of your data in the lake. Now, of course, with the advent of table formats like Apache Iceberg, you get the best of both worlds. A lakehouse that has rich SQL capabilities for data warehousing needs, like traditional data warehousing needs, and of course, a data lake concept which provides reduced complexity and cost. That combination is why we see data lakehouses having a rapid adoption in the market. In fact, we did a recent survey of 500 data practitioners, and we asked them, well, what do you think about a data lakehouse? Are you aware of this? And in fact, 85% of them are keenly aware not only of a data lakehouse, but the benefits that that lakehouse can provide to their organizations. They recognize that, number one, it is enterprise ready, scalable, and performant for the needs of that enterprise with security and governance built in. Second, it can reduce complexity, as we talked about earlier, being able to remove those ETL pipelines that have now gone to the data warehouse. We not only eliminate the traditional data warehouse and the spend associated with that, but also the ETL pipelines that move data and copy data over, which of course we all want to do less of. And finally, it's cost optimization. That's pretty significant, of course, in terms of the amount of value that customers are seeing from data lakehouses. Now, I'm curious in the audience, what percentage of your analytics do you predict will be running in the data lakehouse in the next 3 years? 0 to 25%, 26 to 50%, 50 to 75%, or 76 to 100%. Curious on where you all sit. Now that poll is open and available to you via your web portal. Feel free to put in your option there, and we'll wait for this a few more seconds here for the poll to close. So I'm very curious what all that feedback is. Alrighty, so now, what does data lakehouse adoption look like? In that same practitioner list of 500 practitioners, nearly 70% of them felt that the majority of their data workload, not 10%, not 20%, but rather the majority of their data workloads going forward, and really the next 3 years, will be on a lakehouse platform. And yet, even if you look at the data in totality, nearly all will adopt some form of a data lakehouse architecture to address one or more percent, frankly, of their data needs. And in fact, all that's left is maybe 1 out of the 500 that's decided not to pursue. That's pretty surprising. Why is there this massive adoption? We'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, let's bring up the poll here of the results from the team online and what that poll looks like in terms of percentages. Okay, well, that's pretty interesting. Kind of reflects our data, in fact. Almost 39%, 51 to 75%, expect the data lakehouse to be a big portion of their workloads. Some up to 100%. We're seeing that be significant. Very interesting to see. Clearly, you all see the value of that data lakehouse and all the capabilities that it will provide. So interesting interest there, and we'll see more around that area. Now, all of them are saving massively here. So what's driving this adoption? Over 56% of respondents in our survey showed us that actually they're saving 50% or more on their data analytics needs by moving to a data lakehouse architecture. So they're cutting their bills in at least half most of the time. That's pretty impressive. They're reducing ETL pipelines, they're reducing storage costs, leveraging multiple data engines, of course, is also important. Customer choice ultimately means they can leverage a common format but enable broad flexibility and optimization, both for cost as well as using the right tool for the right job, which we think is ultimately the right thing for you, the customer. And now, this sort of customer savings only happen when the technology shift happens from the data warehouse to now a data lakehouse. And we see it in the data. In fact, as Alex mentioned earlier, a significant portion of those coming to a data lakehouse are coming from traditional cloud data warehouses. We also see about a third are coming from on-premises enterprise data warehouses, be it Oracle, Teradata, et cetera. And then finally, we're seeing those that have traditionally invested in data lake architectures, HDFS environments, et cetera, also moving to a lakehouse approach. So really, all three markets are really converging to leverage this data lakehouse because they all see the benefits of this. Now, the underpinnings of a lakehouse is about the table format, right? That's been a big advance from the traditional announcements around data lakes many years ago. And those have been around Apache Iceberg, Hudi, or Delta. Now, as I said, the underpinning is that table format. Now, what is a table format? It's really the metadata that enables engines to operate on the data in the lake like a data warehouse. And of course, you have to combine that with a smart engine and a metadata catalog. Now, there's lots of formats out there, to be sure. Delta Lake, as you can see on the screen, is about 43% today, and Iceberg is about 30%, Hudi at about 18% from our survey respondents. But interestingly, if you look at where they expect to be in 3 years, they actually expect that 37% of them will be on Apache Iceberg. And in fact, we actually expect Delta Lake to shrink. But that's pretty significant. If Delta is doing what it needs to do, why the popularity in Iceberg? We'll talk about that in a moment. I'm curious, have you all adopted an open table format? And if so, which one? Apache Iceberg, Delta Lake, Hive, or Hudi? I'm very curious about which one you all are considering out there. So again, which in the poll have you adopted an open table format? And wait a few more seconds here for that poll to close. Great. Now, if you think about why this is the case, it's really about what open source really means. Now, Iceberg's open developer community is really what's fueling this adoption. If you can see the logos on the screen, nearly 90% of the contributions are coming from 15 contributors into the Iceberg project. The community is building it, they're approving it, they're contributing to it on a broad basis, and they're self-regulating it on behalf of the broader market. So you get that massive benefit of a community driving open source. It doesn't simply mean that you have to make source available to everybody. That doesn't mean much. What really matters is that there's a community around this that is building an ecosystem of tooling and capabilities that fuels outcomes for customers. Ecosystems that fuel the investments. No vendor lock-in and choice for customers. Let's look at the poll real quick on what you all said about which table format you're considering going forward or leveraging today. That's awesome. Great to see. In fact, your numbers are even better in the audience here than we see here from our State of the Lakehouse survey. 46% of you have said you're going to move on to Apache Iceberg. 35% on Delta, not surprising given the history of where Delta was. And Hive and Hudi are interesting also in terms of percentages. And Hive, of course, has a legacy of being that historical table. And so Hudi is coming up a little bit, but we'll see interesting use cases there. So nice to see Iceberg at top of the list, and I think we'll continue to see that trend. In fact, even at AWS reInvent, we saw massive announcements by Amazon to support Apache Iceberg in the context of leveraging S3. So we also see the public cloud providers adopting open table formats like Apache Iceberg. Now, lakehouses are great, and clearly we've talked a lot about the value of lakehouses. But remember where we started the conversation. Users want to lower MTTI, or their mean time to insight. They want to go faster and get the insights they need to drive business decisions. That requires them to be able to drive self-service analytics. And what does self-service analytics mean? It means going all the way back to the raw data, of course subject to governance and security, so they can actually do what they need to do to drive outcomes for the business. And this is about mitigating the need for as much ETL pipelines as possible. If you can shrink the number of ETL pipelines in your environment, the faster you can get more self-service analytics to your enterprise. And that's what this is really about. So at Dremio, we have a pretty opinionated view on this. We have this concept of shifting left in your data. So what does shifting left mean? It means a notion that not only can you have clients manipulate data, but you can now enable users to move earlier in the data pipeline process, in that data lifecycle, create views on that data, and be able to go from raw all the way to structured analytics and insights without having to work through ETL pipelines or bothering the central data team. In fact, we want the data team to be focused on more interesting problems than having to constantly manage data pipelines. We do this through Lakehouse economics and value, and of course, our intelligent query engine. This is how it works. So let's talk a little bit, double click on this a little bit. Dremio enables users to go to raw data. We do this through the creation of virtual views on data. And of course, we can enable users to stack data on top of data, and views on top of views, excuse me. And that enables them much more flexibility. But that flexibility can sometimes come with performance issues. But the beauty of Dremio is that we leverage both an intelligent query engine as well as our reflections capabilities to provide the right data acceleration at the right time, so the customer gets the perfect balance of price performance in their usage of the system and enables self-service for their enterprise. This eliminates pipelines, intermediate pipelines, all the way to that raw data. This is really the power of Dremio, self-service analytics for the enterprise. We reduce the mean time to insight even further for the user beyond traditional lakehouses. And that's empowering to get insights to those users day in and day out. And at the end of the day, you lower your mean time to insight through lowering need for ETL pipelines and burdening internal data teams. You're able to go faster, bringing those insights to the business users much more directly. Now, in addition to that, and bringing in mean time to insight lower, we also want to enable the next generation of data operations. Dremio pioneered a Git-based data management approach. We believe this is the next generation of data operations. So allow me to walk through this slide a bit. You can see a sort of a branch here. In the middle, this central trunk reflects what you might have seen in traditional software engineering practices. This notion you have this main trunk of data, of data in the system. And you can see two branches that come off after that second circle, an ETL branch and a data science branch. Now let's talk about these branches for a moment. These branches are not simply copies of data. They are actually pointers to the original data. So now you're able to take production quality data, create a branch of it to conduct operations on that branch without impacting production systems. So in this example you see here, you have an ETL branch at the top. That ETL branch allows users and data engineers to be able to ingest data in that top ETL branch. And again, no impact to production. And in that branch, you're able to conduct data quality checks and manipulate that data before merging it back to main, if you will. And in doing so, you have much more decreased data downtime. And you're able to validate and check everything on that branch. So really powerful capability here. Let's take the second example, data science and AI example. We all talk about AI today, but at the root of AI, you have to have that right data, and you have to enable data science teams to move quickly. So what do? Well, Dremio enables you to create yet one more branch of that data through data science. And there you can see in the bottom of that chart, we're able to get data scientists to create a branch, and again, not copying, it's simply a pointer to the original data, conduct their feature engineering work on that, create new columns, new manipulations, new calculated fields, etc. And in that, train their models against that for validation. And they can choose to merge that back to main if they think that's a feature that they want to maintain for quite some time, or they can keep that branch separate and keep it there for testing purposes, or decide, you know what, this feature engineering work didn't work, I'm simply going to drop that branch. Right? Pretty powerful capabilities. And this is about bringing software engineering practices back to data operations. So in summary, as we've talked about from the beginning, Dremio delivers you all the key value propositions, enabling improved data optimization in your enterprise, dramatically reducing mean time to insight, and lowering your costs. All of this based on this fundamental approach of shifting left in your analytics workloads. Dremio combines an intelligent query engine, a self-service experience, again, removing the need for as many ETL pipelines, and then finally, next-generation data operations through our Git-inspired data management. I hope this gives you a sense of who Dremio is. We're very excited about these technologies, and we believe we've seen a lot of value from customers. Now, of course, I'd have to point you to the next steps here. So the first is a QR code for our 2024 State of the Lakehouse Data Lakehouse report. We'd love for you to check it out. I've obviously referenced some statistics here, but there's far more available in that document. And then secondly, we have the Dremio Getting Started QR code. So definitely click on that and head out to dremio.com. And there you can take advantage of Dremio both as software as well as our fully managed cloud offering. Thank you again for the time.
Fantastic presentation to start off this showcase event. Thank you very much, Sendur. Back with you here in the studio. A few points in there, just love to maybe just revisit. I think we've got a few minutes before Mike's going to join us here in the studio. So hopefully a couple of opportunities to dig a little bit deeper into what you've been able to share with the audience so far. The first thing I wanted to just reflect on, you mentioned that slide though, you had a slide a bit earlier on which indicated lakehouses are great, but they don't enable self-service analytics. And so you spent a little bit of time talking about that. But I suppose, can you just, in your opinion, why is it so crucial to make data more self-service?
It's a great question. You know, Alex, when you've last seen a data chart, a slide, analytic, a conclusion, if you will, I'm pretty sure your first question was, how did we get to that data? What's the underlying thing that enabled that data to happen? And so too often we see that in the enterprise. Certainly I feel that way when I see analytics, even at Dremio. And so I want to be able to double click on those analytics. How did we generate that data? And often, when you've generated that data, you might want to say, I want to pivot on these 3 other columns. I want to add this additional information in.
Right.
They have 2 options today. The old paradigm, you could say, I'm going to go to another team and wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks to go make that happen. But with Dremio, you're actually able to do that in a self-service manner on our platform. Go back to raw, add the columns you need, run your analytics. So now, the decision that would take you 3 weeks to go to a team who's already, unfortunately, pretty busy with that data volume and operations they're dealing with, now they're able to run Dremio and actually cut that to hours by yourself. So now your decision is less than a day instead of waiting 3+ weeks. And that's pretty powerful. And we see that time and time again with our customers.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you obviously shared that QR code, or a couple of QR codes right at the end there, didn't you, on your slide deck? One of which was, of course, the report in full, all 17 pages of it, which we, of course, we encourage folks to take a look. But the other one was, of course, Dremio for free, or the platform. Can you tell us a bit about how that works?
Yeah, so our data lakehouse is available both in a self-managed context, we call that Community Edition, or in a fully managed model, and we call that Dremio Cloud. And so both are available. So unlike a lot of other solutions out in the market, we can run not only in a self-managed model, we can also run in a fully managed model as well for customers. Frankly, because every customer has different data residency needs and security needs, so we want to provide that flexibility to those folks. And of course, it's freely available in that you can download and leverage it today without ever having to give us a penny. We really want, because we believe so much in that data lakehouse architecture.
Absolutely. So there's the message, folks. And I think we did flash it up there, didn't we, just for another moment or two, the 2 QR codes. But that does bring us almost to time, I think, here in our opening keynote session. You're going to be back with us anyway for our panel a little bit later on, so it won't be the last time we're seeing you. But thank you very much for kickstarting our showcase here today. Thank you. Lovely stuff. Well, there we go, ladies and gents, and what a start to our Dremio showcase here, of course. There is more on the way, because next up, joining me live in the studio is our next guest. So please give a very warm welcome now to Mike Ferguson, who is the CEO of Intelligent Business Strategies. And Mike, just making your way here into the studio. It's a bit of a one-in, one-out policy, but Mike, thank you for giving us your time and joining us here in the studio today. Did you manage to catch some of the opening keynote there from Sendur?
I certainly did, yeah. It was very good.
Yeah,
very
fantastic. Good. And obviously you're going to be taking more of a look at some of the best practice tips and advice for
I'll be looking at the top data trends, I think, that are going forward into 2024.
And before perhaps we get straight into presentation, maybe a quick word about yourself and all of your experience, obviously, in intelligence business strategies. Tell us a bit about what you guys do.
Well, I'm an independent industry analyst specializing in data and analytics. I spent a whole career in data management and analytics, over 40 years now. Started out just as a regular database administrator, then co-founded a company right at the beginning of the relational database era with a Turing Award winner called Dr. Edgar F. Codd and another guy called Chris Date. Then I went on to become a chief architect of a database vendor myself way back in the late 80s, early 90s at Teradata in Los Angeles. And then came back here in Europe and been working in data and analytics ever since.
Fantastic. So fair to say, live and breathe data
analytics.
analytics.
I guess
really.
I guess I do. Yeah.
And it's been a fascinating year, hasn't it, in many ways? Certainly even the past couple of years, some of the trends we've seen. I know you're going to be touching on some of that as part of your presentation and sort of looking ahead to 2024. So I don't want to encroach on any subject material. So we'll get your slide ready. And again, a message to audience watching along. We do encourage thoughts and ideas, comments in the chat section. Carl is watching, our producer, and of course we can involve you, particularly during our panel sessions. So all being well, Mike, we'll have your slide deck ready here in the studio. I can see it there, which we do, somewhere over our shoulder. Okay. So I'm going to hand things over to you. Cheers, Mike.
Thanks very much, Alex. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you may be. Many thanks for taking time out of your schedule to come to this session today. I want to talk about top data trends, and in order to be able to help you understand those, why they may have come about, I'll just give you a little bit of background quickly on why that might be, then talk about the top data trends, and then perhaps say, well, based upon those trends, what might your investment priorities be going forward when it comes to becoming more data driven. So I think if you look at most executives today, they are pretty bullish around data and AI right now. Huge expectations coming from it, expecting this to be able to transform their business, lower the costs, give them greater efficiency, therefore improve the overall speed of their business and agility within it, so that they can potentially disrupt the markets that they compete in and gain competitive advantage. And I think that's reflected in this survey here, where you can see that despite the tough economy at the moment, we're seeing organizations increasing their investment in data and AI. And because they're getting measurable results, and you can see almost 92% of companies on this survey showing that they're getting measurable results from that and more projected next year. But whilst that's great news, I think you're not really going to get maximum ROI, if you like, out of data and AI unless you really create a high quality and governed data foundation. And I think for most organizations today, they don't have that. What they've actually got is siloed analytical systems, which are aimed at different kinds of analytical workloads. Traditional data warehousing, sort of for business analysts and BI. We may have something like cloud storage and Spark being used for data science. We've got graph analytics going on often in graph databases, and streaming analytics going on somewhere else. And so all of these silos, if you like, have often got different data integration tools. And so people working in each of those silos often using different tools to integrate data to provide data for those environments, whether that happens to be an individual machine learning model in data science, whether it happens to be classic ETL pipelines going into a data warehouse. But the problem here is there's no standard to share metadata between tools, and therefore people working in silos don't often know what's going on in other silos with respect to integrating data. And if the data that they want has already been integrated somewhere else, they're often unaware of it, and therefore will reinvent and potentially run the risk of inconsistency by integrating it or transforming it differently from in other silos. At the same time, the output, if you like, of these silos is often not deeply integrated. We don't get to see machine learning integrated with graph, or graph integrated with BI, or machine learning with BI. Well, we do see some machine learning in BI, but certainly not enough, from my opinion. Or streaming integrated with BI. And so for me, there's plenty of opportunity to get far more richer insights by combining these kind of workloads if you could share data on it. Because at the moment, if a user wants to get insights out of these individual silos, we push complexity onto them. We say, well, you've got to deal with the different query languages of a graph database versus a data warehouse. You've got to be able to connect to these. You've got to figure out how to integrate the data coming out of it, making it hard for them. In addition, I think the number of data sources is increasing rapidly, and as it does so, the number of users wanting to integrate additional new data sources with what they may already have also climbs. And as a result of that, what we're seeing is more pressure to integrate data more rapidly, and if a centralized finite resource of data engineers just often becomes a bottleneck and gets outstripped by the pace of business around them. And that demand just unable to keep pace with it. In addition to that, over the last decade or more, we've had a number of different sort of siloed analytical systems. It's quite commonplace to see multiple BI tools around the enterprise, but often also able to see multiple data warehouses in many cases. And of course, each of those tools has got self-service data preparation built into it. At the same time, on the data science side, in the last decade, we've just seen a frenzy of technology come and go, leapfrog each other, and people are using everything from RStudio to Jupyter notebooks with Python to much more sophisticated data science workbenches, things like Google Vertex AI or AWS SageMaker or Data Robot or Data IQ, for example, and all of them are doing self-service data preparation as well. But it all seems to be for individual need, and so what we've ended up with, if this goes ungoverned, you end up with a kind of Wild West environment, pretty chaotic, people getting data from the sources that they think are the right ones for their own individual use case. And so there's a lot of data integration going on, but not much sharing of what's created. And often you run the risk of personal silos and potentially inconsistent data as people integrate the same data, perhaps for multiple individual needs. And so I guess the approach to building data or producing data for analytics over the last decade has been more like the picture on the left. And so if people can't find stuff, then they just go and reinvent it again. Whereas what people really would like is the picture on the right, which is organized, ready-made, easy to find data that they can just go in, pick up and use and start delivering value from. There are other challenges out there as well, more and more data coming into the enterprise from more and more sources, and what we see is data has been progressively spreading out across a distributed data estate. We now have data in multiple software as a service applications. Outside the enterprise, we've got data in different types of data store in multiple clouds. We've got data in different types of data store on premises, and we've got data streaming in from the edge from a variety of IoT devices, whether that's industrial IoT or consumer IoT, or even streaming in from external sources like financial markets data and whatnot. So that makes it much harder to manage, much harder to find and integrate data as the number of data sources grow. And not only that, but governing this is still fractured. We're still reliant on a number of different administrators around the enterprise, hopefully implementing policies consistently across a range of disparate data stores in order to be able to consistently govern the same data if it appears in multiple places. And so it's hard to be able to govern data, given that governance has now expanded into data access security, privacy, retention, data sharing, data quality, loss prevention, etc. So given that backdrop, even though we are seeing people getting measurable results, I think what we're now seeing is, well, what are the top trends? Well, these are what I see, and without a doubt in 2023, generative AI has dominated the scene. You know, it's everywhere. People looking at it as generative AI applications in different parts of the business. We're also seeing generative AI arriving in the tools that we're using to produce data and analyze data. Hybrid multi-cloud computing is now normal, but real desire now to modernize data architecture and tear down those silos that we saw earlier and bring together, data warehouses, lake houses, data lakes, and streaming. Also to get away from disparate tools that don't work together, which are damaging our productivity, if you like, or inhibiting us, is probably a better word, to rationalizing that onto a common data and analytics technology stack so that we can get collaborative development, we can get metadata sharing, bearing in mind if you use best of breed tools, there is no standard to share metadata. In addition, we're seeing democratization to try and get past that bottleneck we saw earlier, democratization not just of BI and data science, which we've already seen, but now data engineering, fueled by things like, or popularized by things like data mesh. But now that we have generative AI simplifying tooling, we can get citizen data engineers with a lesser skill base able to participate and, of course, manage that in a non-disruptive way using the likes of data ops that Sendur was talking about. In addition to that, we've got an increased desire to share data, and so seeing the growth of data marketplaces, not only just a shop window to look for data, but also to govern it, govern the sharing of it. We're seeing lower latency data, of course, in demand, but also the desire to take the output of all of these analytical initiatives, like BI, like machine learning models and AI bots, and integrate those into our applications and processes to really become data-driven in every part of our business. And on top of that, we're also looking at trying to do a better job of data governance in terms of getting more integrated in that area, more automation in that area, in order to be able to manage that more complex distributed data landscape. And last but not least, trying to manage cost of all of this as CFOs in a tough economy want a completely holistic FinOps view of the data and analytics ecosystem. So if I zoom in on some of those, things like generative AI, as I said, really probably the number one trend this year since ChatGPT emerged back in about February timeframe. And we're seeing, the real productivity gains that natural language prompts could produce within the context of certain business functions. Here you can see examples in marketing, sales, and service that would really make people far more productive. And you can see this visualization from a survey done in Fortune magazine of CEOs earlier this year, that you can see they clearly indicate that they want to increase efficiencies, that they want to automate manual mundane tasks, that they're looking to reduce costs and to automate the capture of new data using the likes of generative AI. And hopefully that changes the experience of both employees and customers and helps people get the job done quicker. We're also seeing this moving into tooling, and as a result of that, what we're seeing is generative AI being used in business glossaries to speed up our ability to produce those, to enhance and enrich metadata in data catalogs, to help us with building data models, prompt-based data engineering, natural language queries in data virtualization and databases, conversion of one SQL to another SQL to help migration of databases, natural language rules and policies that can be converted into code for governance, to do matching rules to match data in master data, and even generate content off of master data, for example, product information and product marketing, and also conversational data search. And all of this comes down to what I think is one major trend with all of this, which is companies trying to industrialize this, turn this into a much more slick, easy way of being able to produce data and AI. And sort of take if we could move to the next slide, please. If we could take a Henry Ford production line approach to be able to doing this, to get multiple teams onto a common production line, to be able to produce data products and analytical products on the back of that, things like machine learning and BI reports. And I think for that reason, we're seeing a move away from standalone projects up the maturity curve towards data and analytics communities where we can get collaborative development and start sharing things. And bearing in mind that there's no standard, to share metadata between tools, that's having an influence on one of the other trends, which is, well, how do we do all of this on top of a distributed data estate and build that data foundation? And the answer is that I got a common integrated data and analytics technology stack that connects to all these sources and allows me to go ahead and build data products. And then in addition, to get a more modern data architecture and tear down those silos. So if I zoom in on those, then certainly getting a common platform with a data catalog to understand what data is available to people, multiple teams in a federated organizational model, being able to produce data products on top of that platform and share metadata and get the job done quicker through collaborative development. In addition, as you can see, the big difference now between this approach and a sort of silos we saw earlier, building data products. Now what we're doing is building pipelines to produce reusable data products, which can then be combinations of those used for different analytical use cases. And as we modernize our architecture and start to pull down those silos and bring them together on shared data, then we get to use those reusable data products to support multiple analytical workloads without copying. And I think the idea of data catalogs along with generative AI is really going to make a difference to productivity in building those pipelines. Also allow citizen data engineers to be able to do that. So they can generate those pipelines and produce those data products and publish them in a data marketplace, which is not just a shop window for consumers to find ready-made data, which is good enough, but we're seeing that as a governance mechanism to share data, where consumers have to accept a sharing agreement before they can gain access to the data, and we don't have to copy it. And not only that, but we're now seeing machine learning models and AI bots and whatnot being added into these marketplaces, which to me is turning them into data and analytics marketplaces. And I think next year we're going to see BI reports added into there as well. So here you see the benefit of data products in a marketplace on the lower part of the diagram, where people can come along and pick whatever combination of data products they need, as you can see, to put together a data mart and immediately start going and analyzing the data within it. And so it becomes an assembly of those components rather than asking people to go all the way back to raw data every time. Whilst at the same time, the data scientist is able to use exact same data products to be able to pull the features that they need for their machine learning models when they're training it. Now, if we build on what Sendur spoke about, which is the idea of saying, well, what happens if these data products were on open table formats like Iceberg or the others? That's a bit of a game changer in the sense that now we've got table formats that are open to multiple query engines as opposed to proprietary table formats that were locked into a specific database. And because of that, we can therefore support multiple analytical workloads running on different engines, whilst at the same time guaranteeing integrity of the data, because open table formats support ACID properties, transaction integrity, and at the same time do schema governance and schema enforcement, and also provide hidden partitioning and compression, which allows us to do parallel query, which is much better performance than just accessing files in cloud storage. So therefore, the architecture changes where we can put data in open tables and open it up to multiple engines to support multiple analytical workloads. And if we can support federated query, we could potentially create those multiple table formats on multiple clouds and still be able to access them, and therefore provide a shared environment to create data products that can then be used for multiple analytical use cases. In addition, as you can see in a Dremio environment, therefore we could connect to these open table formats through the Dremio catalog and then Dremio Sonar on top, building those data products and being able to support both business intelligence and data science workloads, for example. And then finally, we pull out those data products. Consumers can select what they need, produce the analytical products, the machine learning models, the BI reports and whatnot that you see, and then publish those back in so that people coming after them find 60%, maybe 70%, maybe 80% or more of what they need already made, and so they get progressively faster. So this approach is accelerating everything over time in a progressive manner. And at the same time, the marketplace starts to move to the center of the enterprise where people can find ready-made and start wiring those into the applications and processes to really become a data-driven enterprise. On the governance front then, just to sort of wrap up, I mean, we see trying to do a better job over there, data catalogs, understanding the distributed data estate, and allowing both central functions like legal on data privacy and data owners around the enterprise to define the policies to govern this data within the catalog, but without a metadata standard to push those policies to multiple underlying systems. We will see software agents and workflows to try and govern those policies and enforce them out across the distributed data estates. So given that those are the major trends that I see, then where should your investment priorities be? And I sort of see 5 broad categories here. A data and analytics foundation. I think that means getting a data and analytics program office in place, get a full-blown integrated data governance program in place, and a common data and analytics stack. Data literacy, upskilling the people across the business by creating a data and analytics community, creating a data and analytics academy, using generative AI to be able to make tools available to people with lower skills base and sharing everything across teams. Modernizing the architecture using open table formats to tear down those silos and get to a shared data environment so that we can support multiple analytical workloads in different compute clusters, even on the cloud. And then build data products to get this reusable approach going and to accelerate consumers so they get faster and faster and faster at delivering value and making sure that the projects that they're working on are aligned with your business strategy. And again, using generative AI to help them become more productive and to be able to share what they create across the enterprise. And then, of course, integrate what they create into our processes and applications. So I hope that's given you an idea of what I think the data trends are, and with that, I'll hand it back to Alex.
Fantastic stuff. Mike, thank you very much indeed for delivering our second presentation as part of this Dremio showcase. A lot of ground covered. So a lot to digest, no doubt, for folks watching along. But a couple of questions from me, if that's all right. I think we've got a couple of minutes before our panel. But the first one, and just sort of reflecting on some of your themes as you set out. Of course, generative AI is very much talk of the town these days for a lot of organizations. But as we look ahead to the future and as AI adoption matures, as it no doubt will, do you think fundamentally there will be a greater appreciation for data quality? You know, we've always heard the adage garbage in, garbage out, but quite frankly, these models can only produce outcomes as good as the data we're putting in. Is that going to improve an awareness and appreciation for data quality, do you think?
Oh, 100%. I think the realization that AI is now strategically important is already in the boardroom in most of my clients at least. But I think, you know, you can't get accurate predictions, you can't get accurate AI, accurate business intelligence even with inconsistent poor quality data. And so I think this really puts a responsibility on the business to make as much effort as possible to try and get the quality of data as high as possible to guarantee really rock solid predictions and recommendations and content that they generate through generative AI, absolutely.
And you mentioned data management as well, I think somewhere in your piece, and we know that's something that organizations, you know, some have struggled with to get a handle on. And I'm just curious, in this AI era that we've entered, you know, we see a lot of talk about using data to drive AI, but can you actually see the other way around where we can use AI to enhance data management? Is that a trend?
100%. It's already happening. It's going into tools. I actually think AI will also make recommendations to people in order to help improve the quality of data and therefore speed up their ability to engineer it. And so with generative AI as well, able to generate code, accelerate that even more. And so we're using recommendations where it makes sense. And so AI being baked into the tools, if you like, in order to be able to help people be more productive and do a much better job of improving quality.
And one other quick question for you, because I think panelists are waiting in the wings patiently, but a lot of organizations have almost too much data. We hear it time and time again, almost drowning in too much data. Are we going to need to save as much data in this future that we're heading towards, do you think, fundamentally?
Are we going to what, sorry?
Have to save as much data?
I think there'll always be a thirst for data, without a shadow of a doubt. I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. But I do think what people want is the ability to get away from 80% of your time spent processing and transforming and integrating data. That number has to get shortened dramatically. And I think that's where the focus, if companies double down on this, whilst also improving data quality, then we're going to see really measurable results at the other end of this. I think that's, so I don't think it's a case of too much data. I think we really need to understand it more rapidly and be able to figure out how to use it to drive business value.
And that's where, of course, as you say, the value lies, no doubt.
Absolutely.
But we're going to get into that hopefully a little bit more in this next session. But Mike, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us as part of your presentation. If you stay put for just a moment, as I say, that is our second session as part of our Dremio showcase here today. Thank you very much for watching along so far. We've got plenty more on the way. Up next, it is our panel. We'll be back very shortly.
Every organization is working to empower their business users with data and insights. But data lake performance is slow, data warehouses are expensive, and data is siloed across multiple sources and locations. Dremio's data lakehouse provides sub-second queries directly on data lakes, such as AWS, Azure, and Hadoop, enabling business intelligence dashboards and analytics applications to run directly on the lake. With Dremio, data teams can easily connect to all of their data sources, provide unified data access, and enable self-service through a simple, intuitive, and business-friendly user experience. Dremio's Open Data Lakehouse supports community-driven standards such as Apache Parquet, Apache Iceberg, and Apache Arrow, so there's no proprietary format or lock-in. Now with Dremio, analysts and data scientists can quickly find the data they need, create new views and columns, and deliver better insights faster. When you're ready for self-service analytics and sub-second performance across all of your data, try Dremio, the easy and open data lakehouse.
Welcome back, folks, and welcome to our next session. As you can see, we've reconfigured one or two things here in the studio. It is our panel, and as I say, we've got some new faces with us and some old ones as well, back from earlier sessions. We'll introduce you them properly in a moment or two. But before we do, we have a quick poll question to ask you folks. Here it is. What do you think is going to be the top 2024 data and analytics trend? We've heard already some of the thoughts of our speakers, but what are yours? And there's some options that you can choose from here. Here they are. You've got data ops, generative AI, data observability, federated governance, data contracts, or option number 6 there is other. And if you are inclined to put other, please do tell us what that may well be in the chat section. As I say, Carl, our producer here today, will keep an eye on that for you. We can bring you in as part of this. We'll take a look at the results to the poll very shortly, but let's go ahead and welcome our panelists. Please say hello again to Sendur, to Mike, and to Mark Sear, who's a new face as part of our panel here with us in the room today from Maersk. And perhaps maybe if I start with yourself, Mark, you enjoying the showcase so far?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Good fun. Learning a lot. That's what counts.
Good. That's what hopefully all of our audience can take away from today as well. And maybe just by way of a proper introduction, really. I know we've got your session following this one. Maybe you just want to tell the folks watching along a bit about yourself and your experience, your pedigree in this field.
Well, I typically say my name is Mark and I'm a dataholic. And that's really what I am. Worked in tech for 40 years. Always worked with data. Love data. My hobby is data. Probably not a lot more to say than that. It's just data, AI, machine learning. That's what it's all about.
Live and breathe it, exactly as we were saying earlier on. And hopefully, I'm no doubt that passion will shine through here in this session here today. As we get your thoughts on what are the top predictions for 2024. It's a bit of a broad church, no doubt, but we'll go through it one by one, really. And I think easy questions for me to ask, at least to start with, but perhaps not so easy to answer. But we'll start right at the top, really, and think about the top challenges as we're looking ahead to 2024. Lots of organisations probably already are, but maybe Sendur, if I start with you, that question, in essence, the top challenges, what can you share with our audience?
You know, you've got this compounding growth of data volumes. I suspect Maersk is probably 40, 50% year-over-year data volume growth. And you've got, with that, constant questions being asked of the data. And so you've got this sort of push and pull. I think that's a big challenge for organizations. Constant need to go faster on analytics and insights, but then constant volumes of data growing. And that creates just this massive complexity. So who manages all this complexity? Sometimes central data teams do, and sometimes the actual product owner's data as a product, if you will. You've heard that trend before. And so I think the biggest challenge is really for a lot of our organizations building the right data operating system, not to be too buzzwordy, but frankly creating the right framework for operating with data is going to be so important. And there's solutions like Dremio, of course, that can help with that. But at the end of the day, it has to start with the right mindset and around the whole organization. And a lot of the practitioners that I speak with, they sit in, sometimes, unfortunately, sit in their IT or infrastructure silo. And it's that partnership with the business that makes all the difference in my mind. And that's the challenge I think they're facing.
And you hear that time and time again, don't you? Especially that divide between IT and the wider business, of course. But Mike, maybe just if I come to you, I think earlier, might have been yourself, we were talking about data complexity as being one of the, I was hearing that in your response there. Do you share that view with Sendur?
Yeah, wholeheartedly. I mean, I think data complexity is a major issue. We've now got, as I said, distributed data estate. That makes it harder to find, harder to integrate, harder to manage, harder to govern. And so I think, getting that under control, understanding it, and helping govern that and getting the right tooling on board to be able to do that really matters, because as we see, consistent data, high quality data really matters when it comes to the outputs that we're all trying to produce here. The insights that are coming out of machine learning, that are coming out of BI and whatnot. All of that really matters. I think data complexity can be almost overwhelming at times, and I think that's why I think a rock solid foundation around data governance matters. It's not like super jazzy topic, but it's a really important one.
Yeah. He didn't, and one thing I think you implied implicitly in that is the trust piece of it, right? Everyone's jobs are on the line when they're producing these data sets, right? They're doing financial reporting, they're doing critical audit compliance reporting. So trust is only comes when you have that right governance in place. So trust is a big piece as well.
Yeah. And maybe Mark, what about yourself? Your thoughts on what your peers are
much
saying?
the same. I think
Yeah.
probably the single biggest problem is just complexity, but also the speed of change. Freedom of knowledge of what's going on in the data world. There is probably literally not an hour goes by in my day where I don't get pinged by one of our 100,000 users saying, have you seen this tool? Have you thought about using this? Can we use this? We'd like to use this. And that explosion of interest in data is something, and I hate to use the word control, but if you don't get to grips with
Just to harness that.
something my boss has said to us recently is do less next year, not more.
I think though as well, we're at the point now where the complexity of data to some extent is outstripping humans' ability to deal with it all manually. And so therefore we need technology to automate the ability to understand what we have, to automatically classify it and help us be able to identify, how to do this job much more rapidly and get control of it. And I think that's, we're getting AI to be able to assist people to do that these days.
Yeah. Well, of course, that's something both of you have spoken about, generative AI. I mean, it is the top trend, arguably, of this year at least. How do you see data teams adapting to adopt generative AI? Obviously, it's already in play, but what have you seen perhaps work well?
I've seen, so maybe there's sort of flavors of generative AI and sort of it's a broad brush term. I think where I see the biggest value and the most near-term sort of monetizable value, for lack of a better term, is really in this concept of using it as the natural interface for accessing and using data. And so we could talk about all the various large language models out there, but frankly, the ability to just access your data and ask questions of your data very, very quickly and effectively is very important. I mean, Google popularized this with their single search bar to sort of bring the web in. In a lot of ways, it's a good analogy to what organizations are facing, which is large volumes of data growing, complexity. Most folks don't know where to find the data, let alone do they trust the data. So you've got to figure out and use something like generative AI to help make that easier. So I do think it's the new user interface in a lot of ways.
I think as well, though, with generative AI coming from a background where it's trained on massive amounts of public content, I think the ability to be able to make embeddings out of data catalog metadata to help pass over into generative AI, large language models, really is going to make a big difference in helping solve this problem.
Yeah, and in fact, we did, within even Dremio, we've added the ability to do text to SQL, so ask a question, convert it to SQL. And that was just step one. I mean, really the next, that we just recently are releasing is now the ability to automatically do labeling and wikis in the system. And we will continue to move forward where we'll be able to then do semantic searching. So instead of knowing, hey, what zip code is this, where is the address, we should be able to figure that detail out without, in the historical world, manually writing these terms and differences, none of that. We sort of de-wrangle, if you will, as much as possible.
And I suppose looping this back to data lakehouse architecture, of course, which we're talking about here today. I mean, is AI going to be the best thing for data lakehouses, in your opinion?
I think it's an element. Like there's no perfect nirvana, sort of use a term in sort of my presentation. But I think it's a tool, and those tools can be leveraged. And if they're leveraged the right way, they can truly advance. And in fact, we've seen advances like, a lot of the Copilot examples are helping a ton in terms of driving productivity. And so someone that you would take 10 hours to do something now you do in an hour and a half or 2 hours. I think it's all about a productivity benefit that comes with generative AI. There's this fear around jobs and so forth. And really, my thinking is, no, actually it means we can do a lot more and be more productive and thus do more higher value things. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I asked you the question, I think, just at the tail end of your session about, as we're seeing sort of the adoption curve, continue and increase, is that leading to a greater appreciation for the value of what data brings to an organization? Are you seeing that in terms of, the AI adoption is really brought that into sharp focus?
I think it's made people think more than it's necessarily made them think about the value of data. But the corollary of it is people are now beginning to think about quality. They're beginning to think about, well, if I just go onto ChatGPT and I ask it a question, can I really trust it? That then makes them think, well, if you've got an internal ChatGPT, I really need to be able to trust it because my customer is going to see it. So I think it's making people appreciate value. And I think for the first time in several generations, people are actually really beginning to believe that data quality is vital. Because in the past, everybody's wanted data quality, but honestly, nobody's really wanted to make the effort to do it.
I also think, though, that data products are helping people think about data more easily. You can think about data. Data is just like some big sea of it. I mean, but data products are really bringing it into business focus. and therefore allow people to zoom in on specific kinds of data and talk about it more. And that really allows this kind of world between business and IT to kind of collapse a little bit and come together, because I think it really makes a difference in terms of talking about data in a business context like that.
Let's pause for just a moment, because we asked our folks watching, of course, what they see as perhaps the sort of top emerging trends. Generative AI was one of the options. We've spent a few minutes just discussing it here. So maybe let's just take a look and see what our audience have put then in relation to this question a few minutes ago. Well, there you go. That pretty much confirms why we're right to be talking about it here as part of this panel. So yeah, 57% there of the audience indicating generative AI. Perhaps no surprises, but then 21% data ops. I think 10% there data observability. But we talked about what we thought we might see in this poll a little bit early on. There's the confirmation. And federated government's in at 9%. So I don't know if there's anything just to extrapolate from the results. What are you seeing there in what our audience have put?
I think there's an awful lot of people, if those numbers hold, that are going to be sued for giving out inaccurate data. Become a lawyer now, because you're not going to have one 50% without the other. Not unless you want to run the risk of hallucinations, which is something we don't want. So.
No, absolutely. And I suppose then, my sort of final question on this particular point: what would your single best advice be for organisations that are getting to grips with this, trying to wrap their arms around AI as you say, it's a broad stroke, but what advice would you have for folks here on this journey?
Yeah, I'd love your perspective as well as a day-to-day practitioner, but I would say, too often there's this sort of, people are thinking about a big picture solution. Hey, let me build this massive foundation, and let me do this massive thing of deploying XYZ infrastructure and spending millions of dollars doing so without getting to the value first. And so what I often talk to practitioners about is, can you shift that thinking and take a vertical slice? Essentially to go from foundation all the way up to value to the user and back. And the reason you do that is then you get to deliver to the end user, if you will. That is ultimately the customer at the end of the day in any data conversation. And we want to make sure those folks are getting the value. They trust the data. They see value in it. They're able to drive business insights and decisions. And if you can do that in one sliver, then you can rinse and repeat over time. Because as you add more data sources and more information, the complexity is exponential. And so that allows you to get to value quickly. If you go the other way, which is you start at the foundation and you build everything out at the foundation, that makes it very challenging. And oftentimes we see this with our customers. Those that start with a single use case with Dremio tend to do a lot better, because they say, I'm going to do this use case, I'm going to get to value, I see the value, then I'm going to go expand, et cetera, et cetera. It's the ones that take 2-year projects that make it more challenging, and we tell them, hey, why don't you get to value on this first piece, and then we can do the rest. That's the shift that I think we need to start seeing more.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I mean, I think we're obligated to understand what the strategic business objectives are within a business strategy, and then align these projects with that. So that you're building out a collection of what data products, what machine learning models, what BI, what AI bots are needed to achieve that business objective. And so you're really focused on value from the get-go, rather than a kind of field of dreams approach, which let's just build all this big data foundation and hope they go use it, which is absolutely not the approach. I mean, I think, therefore, it's imperative, if you like, on people to understand the business strategy and priorities, and then look to business align. And that's why I think the federated organizational structure is also particularly important, where I talked about a sort of program office that kind of oversees all of these initiatives, and whose job it is to make sure that they're aligned.
Well, speaking of alignment, I'm just going to loop it back to the report, the State of Data Lakehouse report. You mentioned obviously some of the challenges that organisations will no doubt face in 2024, whether it's the complexity, whether it's quality. How was it reflected in the report, and perhaps what we're hearing from our panellists in the report itself?
Yeah, I think what you already saw in the adoption of lakehouses is part of, I think, this trend towards simplification. And why is that? Well, you saw in sort of the picture there, people are hopping from multiple environments. I want ETL over here, I want to copy and do this over here. I've heard some of my customers say copying data is the devil, sort of is a statement they make. And while that may be an extreme statement, I think it reflects the fact that they're trying to bring some stewardship to the data, because if you don't have the stewardship, you have the hallucinations and everything else. So I do believe the State of the Lakehouse report tells you at least people are moving in that direction, and lakehouses are a good major step in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's let's continue the conversation. And again, folks, if you have any thoughts for our panelists here today, then do share them with us and we can bring you in as part of our conversation. But let's think for a moment about macro trends for folks here, and what maybe comes to mind when you think about some of these, and maybe what should data leaders be aware of as we look ahead to 2024? Sort of get the glass ball out a little bit, but it looks like it's being directed this way. So
there's a comment in the chat. What should data leaders think about? I think they have to think about just the speed of change. What's happening around them. I think agreeing with what these guys have said, the days of 5-year Soviet plans are gone. I think you're very lucky if you've got a 5-month plan right now. So I think they need to focus in on doing fewer things better but faster. Rinse and repeating, to your point. Single use case, get it out there, smash it, get the value, find the next one, learn the lesson, go, go, go. Not, let's get together a committee, let's get together a steering group, and all those things that, quite frankly, in my opinion, not an official Maersk opinion, I should say, are just a waste of time. And that's, I think, it's going to be very hard for some people to move. And it's why I think you start to see perhaps a generational change happening, that the older, more senior people are actually finding it harder to react to these changes than the younger people who've grown up with data. They've grown up with everything on their phones, etc. They're the people I see pushing, let's get to the next level. I have one guy on my team in particular, he's like 22 years old, he's at university, and he's not even studying computer science. What he knows about large language models and how to leverage them is like gold to my organisation, to my team. So learn that lesson.
And Mike, I'm just curious, is that a trend also, sort of resonate with what Mark's saying there?
I think to some extent, but I also think as well, this whole, I think Sendur talked about it in his presentation, the whole kind of learnings from software development, getting into this whole, continuous integration, continuous delivery approach. So you're getting incrementally roll out continuous progression, to really accelerate things without disrupting what's going on at the moment, and therefore incrementally driving more and more. But also, I think I alluded to the fact that as you build more and more ready-made, then the people who are coming after you are going to find 60, 70, 80% of what they need already made, and therefore they're going to get progressively faster as you incrementally build that up. And so, the whole approach then is far more modular. It's not one big monolithic analytical system I'm trying to build. What I'm actually doing is getting this production line approach going and accelerating the consumption side, so that over time they actually get faster and faster and faster to deliver value, just because more and more of what they need has already been built. And so this whole reusability thing really, really matters.
Well, you mentioned there was a comment in the chat, and there was, and it's actually a question for yourself, at least initially, from one of our audience members, and it's looping back a little bit to we were talking about hallucinations with large language models, and the question here is, how are you thinking about dealing with hallucinations? How are you going to mitigate for those?
I think our initial approach will be to make sure that the quality that goes into the actual foundational data we've got is right. Secondly, we'll obviously be building RAG augmentation, so retrieval augmentation alongside it, to make sure the right corporate rules are applied to that data as it comes out. And then the third thing that we're looking at doing, very potentially at the moment, is building our own small language model or large language model. For example, you can tune a 1 trillion token, 7 billion input model now for about $250,000 in 9 days. And I think that will be a trend that will come, because if you think about the nature of, let's say, ChatGPT, just to chuck one out there, so much of the stuff is in there you don't actually need. It's great to know who the US president was in 1826, but quite frankly, not many people in my organisation are asking that. So I think you'll start to see more people think about building models internally as the thing matures. That will in turn eliminate hallucinations, or certainly reduce them. And then I think the whole game changes again around about end of March. Maybe I might go as late as June when AGI is announced, and then all bets are off then. So I think it's going to be one of the most exciting years to be alive ever the next year. I really do.
There you go. That's a soundbite and a half for 2024, isn't it? Do you share that though, in many ways, Sendur, those feelings?
Yeah, I think we're in a bit of a hype cycle, but I also
Yes.
agree that there are some real tangible use cases we've all seen, as Mark is alluding to, and I think you've already got it in production in several situations, I think, and I think he's seen the value. So I do think these new technologies, such as if AGI ultimately matures and gets there next year, which would be very interesting to see, and that is a game changer if that ends up happening. But ultimately, to get all that right, you got to have that curated set of data that's relevant for your domain space, and that will drive even faster accuracy in what you're doing. And so that is going to be a piece of the puzzle. So even if you said tomorrow, I want to drop out new large language models, unless you have a mature data environment like Mark does, you're not going to be able to take advantage of that. So you've got to do both. Now is the time to go make that happen. And I think in doing so, those that are deploying large language models, the tooling is getting more and more mature. Like every month you're getting new tooling, but actually it's also starting to consolidate and making it easier either from the cloud providers or what have you. And so that combination means you don't need to sit there and stitch everything together. You may have a whiz kid 22-year-old from Maersk, no poaching, right? It's not okay. But if you don't, you want to still set that foundation of getting their data quality and governance right, and getting basic data-driven analytics happening. Then when you get to generative AI and even potentially AGI, then you get to a place where now you can trust the data, and that is critical, because if you go drop on AGI on top, or even a traditional generative large language models today, and you don't trust the data, it's going to be totally useless.
Rules don't change, right? Garbage in, garbage out was first quoted in 1947, wasn't it?
I don't know.
So I think it was around about 1947, right? So you go figure. The rules do not change. Nothing is going to magically fix this for you. Yeah. So start with that foundation.
No, absolutely. I'm going to pivot ever so slightly to another sort of question here that we have regarding talent and skills. And this is obviously something that I don't think any organisation has been immune to, particularly in recent years. Is there a talent or a skill that you found particularly difficult to attract or indeed retain? So two ways of thinking about that. And again, subsequent, wider questions, how should data leaders sort of adapt to that sort of situation? Maybe if I start with yourself, Mike, with your clients.
Two come to mind. The first one is data engineers, but I think the way, the second one's data modeling, actually. We almost sort of skate over that, like it's not important, like it's a dying art almost. But I really think these are two fundamental skills that really, really matter. And I think the way to overcome it, given that there's a just shortage in the market anyway, is what I alluded to, which is this whole idea of a data and analytics academy, and investing in your own employees, upskilling your own employees. I also think taking IT expertise and embedding in those teams around the enterprise, tasks the IT expert with upskilling the people in their team. And so it's almost like that IT switches to be an enabler rather than just an expert that goes off and does everything. And so to me, that's what's really going to fuel this. And some great successes. As you know, I'm chairman of Big Data London, and some great case studies this year at that conference of people implementing data and analytics academies. It really has made a difference to their employee base. And I think as well, you get traction from the employee base because they then feel that their employer is upskilling them and investing in them. And I really think that makes them, more determined to contribute to the overall performance of the organization.
I'm going to open that question up. I mean, if you...
Well, I'm very lucky because I actually look after the AI and machine learning internal. We call it academy. We prefer to call it a learning process. We've put this year over 1,100 people through our 101 course, which is fantastic. Next year, just rolling out this week, actually. Shout out to Ashish. He's just rolling out to another 2,000 people, that same 101 course. They then graduate through 201. 201 split into an A and B, whether you want to be a practitioner or just learn how to recognize use cases. The feedback in general is, this is amazing, the company is letting us do this. And we see it as a team sport, okay? So data is a team sport. It's not something just somebody sits in a corner and does. In terms of the skills, I think this probably sounds a strange thing to say, the most uncommon skill out there is the ability to think. And those are the people you need to take real good care of, people that can think outside the box and people that are not afraid to cannibalize their own products and their own careers in order to move things forward, that don't just want to sit in a corner and say, this is my job and come hell or high water, I'm hanging on to it. Those are the things that I like to encourage in people: freedom of thought, freedom of action.
Yes, yeah. And Sendur, anything just to add really onto what your peers have said here?
I think the piece that I'm going to say data literacy, but ultimately it's similar concepts.
AI literacy,
Yeah, it's very important. Partly because we have this notion of I'm a business user who typically, or in the business unit, who has a better sense of their data than other teams, and so because they have a better sense, getting them to be data literate means that they can then take all that business knowledge, that 90%, 95%, add in that that smidge or that pinch of data literacy, and now they're much more enabled because they're taking full advantage of that 95% versus the opposite, where you're trying to force one team to go learn the whole business to then know which data to pick.
Sure.
We want to make that, and that's all about that self-service piece we talked about earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, got another question here, and it's again one of those that I like to ask, but I'm not really sure if it's as easy to answer. But what is one thing most data leaders aren't thinking about that you think they should be focused on as we look ahead to 2024? I'll give you a moment just to sort of process. But
yeah.
you've got one already. Okay, so Mike's ready.
Yeah.
Let's go to you first.
Well, as I said in my presentation, I think there's an awful lot of assumptions out there at the moment. And the one thing I would say is they should really be focused on making sure that the tools that they're using are integrated and can share metadata, because there's no industry standard out there. And people just kind of assume I can buy tool X, tool Y, and they're just going to stick together like Lego bricks and I can be productive. And then they find that they can't. And they have to do rework or rekeying of stuff into other tools in order to get going. And it frustrates, and therefore they learn after they've bought. And I really think that, that's why I said in one of the trends that I mentioned was companies rationalizing towards a common tech stack to do data and analytics, because they're frustrated because of, they have technology limitations, not because they're necessarily missing tools all the time, but because the tools that they have just don't work together.
Quick off the mark as well. So thank you, Mike, for your thoughts. Same question. I don't know if you managed to.
You go first on me.
You go ahead.
I think they need to think about their people more than anything else. I think products are great. You can buy a product. People will ultimately implement it.
Yeah.
You have to get your people buying into what your vision is for data, and you have to listen to those people, because some of the best ideas come from some of the youngest, newest people. And I think most data leaders need to open their minds to their people and guide their people along the way, because there's an awful lot of people that I meet, they're nervous about AI, they're nervous about what it means. Will you be able to automate every data engineering role within 18 months? Maybe you can, I don't know. But you need to be open and honest with your people, I think, to carry you through this tremendous change that we're going to go through.
And use their ideas, because a lot of employees are already highlighting mundane tasks that they really don't like doing that could easily be automated through generative AI. Getting your own employees, active in saying, take this off my back and get it automated because I really want to do something more productive, I think is a great way to get them involved,
I would echo maybe one key word that Mike mentioned around rationalization. So simplifying is always an important piece. More tooling, more real estate, if you will, management. No one gets up in the morning and says, I want to have 3 more systems to pull data from, right? No one gets up and does that. I don't think so anyway. People want to simplify.
Yes.
And so I think the more, as data owners, data leaders think about, data quality, because I think if you don't have that, nothing else matters, frankly, and you can't trust the data. But once you've established that trust, I think it's about simplifying your infrastructure. And the more complex you make it, frankly, the more things that can fail, the more things you have to manage, the more, frankly, your TCO goes up as well, right? The value is in the insights, not in the data infrastructure. The data infrastructure is critical to enable that value, but you want to simplify that to make your life easier. And that's a critical piece of it. So I don't hear enough simplification from data leaders, and I think it's a theme that I'm hopeful they can all take to heart and start to implement.
There we go.
I think one other thing is organizational structure, operating model to do this. We talk about centralized on the one side and then going distributed on the other side. But I kind of think federated is now the in operating model. Where if we are going to have multiple teams around the enterprise, can we have a common program office? Can we have coordination? That everybody kind of knows what piece of the puzzle they're building, and how it aligns with business strategy. I think it helps the teams because they can see that they're part of a bigger puzzle. I also think it helps the company because the company can see who's building what, where, and for what business purpose. And I think, this kind of sort of federated operating model is something I think that organizations should think a lot about.
Okay, then, well, conversely, to sort of flip the question on its head, really, we asked you, what most leaders aren't thinking about. Is there something that has been a priority maybe in years previous that actually doesn't need to be thought about as much anymore? Is there a way of approaching that question, if you could distill it into something that you think actually times have changed and we're moving in a slightly different direction? Is there anything that you could share with our audience? I'm going to maybe start with you.
Look, maybe controversial, but I think the days of dashboarding are dying. The days of, isn't this amazing, here's a pie chart that nobody really understands, but I can slice and dice it in a million ways and send whatever slice I want to somebody. Yeah. I really think those days are dying. It's time to throw out those types of things and start realising that a pie chart is not necessarily insight.
No.
Okay, it's a very big difference between something perceived as insight and true insight. And that's one of the things, I'm not just going to say this just because you're here, but one of the things we like about Dremio is it gets people to the point of insight very, very quickly. We're giving them a cube of data they can just slice and dice, say, there you go, Mr. Businessman, good luck with that, you've got everything. Doesn't answer that question. No. Whereas getting to the nub of letting them do it themselves is really powerful.
We hear that consistent theme across some of the customers. Yeah, that 3 weeks to a day, frankly, and that becomes a big enabler for organizations. The last thing Mark wants is 7 more calls from the users asking for, I want this, can you give me this cube or that cube or this cube? You want to make it easier.
I love them though.
Yes.
It's that simplification piece, isn't it? That's what we're sort of coming back to each time. I think that's clear. Mike, any sort of thoughts, or do you want to stew on it? Because I think we have someone who might be willing to come up and ask a quick question before the end of our panel here today. So let's go ahead and welcome an audience member up here on to the big screen, as it were, in the studio. Hello, sir. How are you? Oh, let's just check you're not on mute, because I can definitely see your mouth moving, but I can't hear any audio. So let's just check everything's working your end. There we go. I can hear some audio now. Yes, hello again. Let's try that again. Tell us who you are and maybe your question for our panelists here.
Yes, I have a question for Mark. Mark, I know we spoke at Big Data London and you are amazing in terms of the insights that you shared, but would love to know a little about how are enterprise companies adopting Gen AI and where do you see it going in 2024?
Okay, well, thank you. I'll make sure I Venmo you the money a bit later for saying that. We're adopting it right now. We're taking, I think it's a very positive stance, which, as I said earlier, is to hit 3 or 4 areas very quickly, very hard, and make sure we get value. So we've got co-pilots going, particularly at the moment in sales. So sales co-pilots for our salespeople, obviously, we're going through, for example, Salesforce data, working out what people's mood is, etc., and helping them out on that, number 1. Number 2, if you think about the nature of large-scale logistics, which we do a lot of, 6 million containers a year being moved around. If you think about what that means a lot of paperwork, a lot of contracts, a lot of, how does this work in practice? So what we're looking at is putting vast amounts of documentation, vast amounts of contracts into a highly, highly tuned and accurate database, which on top of which sits a chat GPT or chat interface, so that people can ask questions like, how many contracts have got X, Y in it? What is the get out clause for this contract, et cetera, et cetera. So it's real practical things. But as I said earlier, it's about doing less in 2024 than we've tried to do this year. It's about doing less and getting value out of those projects. So 2023 was really a huge experimentation for us, great fun. We all had an amazing time. 2024, now it's time to put the pedal to the metal, deliver hardcore solutions for the business.
There we go. Love it. Fantastic.
Thank you. Good to see you again, incidentally. I do remember you, actually.
Lovely stuff. Well, thank you very much Thank you very much to
you.
for coming up, and also a lot of love in the chat, I think, for your shirt as well. But, your coincidence, I thought.
There's a story behind it, but I won't say it because it's bizarre.
Absolutely. Well, look, we've got a few minutes left here as part of our panel, so I just want to sort of get some final thoughts, really, from each of you before we go. I mean, as I said, the premise of this panel was looking forward to 2024. I think you've surmised it in sort of very nicely and succinctly in the fact that it's going to be a year of, I suppose, specifics and really doubling down on all the experimentation, the innovation of 2023, and actually, as you say, really looking at specifics and use cases. Does that align with your thoughts, your vision for Dremio looking ahead to 2024?
For us, we listen. It's always there's a phrase I think you've heard from an old tech movie called a Ready Player One, which is you fight for the user. In a lot of ways, so for us, we fight for that end user, that customer, and how do we make their life as easy as possible? So removing knobs, make it simpler is an important key pillar for us. So we talked a lot about self-service in my presentation, but the self-service piece ties to ease of use, and so both of those things are very important for us. So the more we make it easier for folks to leverage, and it doesn't mean you need 500 sophisticated things. Like, that's not the goal. The goal is to simplify and make it easier for them to get their insights. And if we can do that, I think we'll have a great ability to fight for that user. That's important for us.
Yeah, I love that. And Mike, quick word from you for the sort of final thought looking ahead to next year.
Next year is a very exciting year, but I think the one thing I would just say, it kind of echoes what Mark said a little bit, is stay focused on value. Don't try and boil the ocean with all of this stuff. There's so much out there. And to echo what Sendur said, take complexity away from users. Don't push it onto them. The more you do that, and then if we can coordinate that and people see progressive movement towards greater and greater value, moving that needle bit by bit, whatever on those outcomes, I think is far more impressive than trying to get a big bang out of this. It's just being systematic and getting into a kind of more, as I was trying to say, more industrialized, well-oiled machine approach to this, rather than trying to have lots of different projects and trying to innovate everywhere. I think it's much better if you pick some of these top priorities and just go after them and progressively make incremental gains.
Yeah. And it's exciting to think where we'll be in 12 months' time as we look back on 2024. Who knows what innovation we'll have uncovered. But thank you very much for joining us here today as part of our panel. It's great to have such thought leaders in one room and a virtual audience watching along. But of course, folks can connect with you in all the usual ways and places. I know, Mark, you're going to stay with us, aren't you? So we can talk about that shortly. But Sendur and Mike, is anywhere we can direct folks to connect with you?
LinkedIn's always the best place, or obviously the Dremio.com website. It's always important.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
and Mike?
likewise, LinkedIn or intelligentbusiness.biz, B-I-Z.
There we go. All right. Well, thank you very much
Thank you.
to our panelists today. That does bring us to a close here in this particular session, but we're not done yet. We've got one more session on the way for you. That's coming up next. And welcome back, folks, and welcome to our final content session here as part of this Dremio showcase. I hope you're enjoying the event so far and watching along. And so we've reconfigured a few things here in the studio. Our panelists have now vacated the space, but one of those is going to join us here again for our final session here today, and it is Mark who's going to join us here in the studio to talk all things supply chain, I believe, and of course the role in which data plays. So Mark,
Thanks very much.
just like magic, here you are here in the studio.
Completely like magic. I was beamed in.
Beamed
which is
in, exactly.
Absolutely
yes.
great. First of all, can I thank you for using such a terrible picture of me? I really, I can't bear it. So I'm actually here to talk about data as a force multiplier. But before I get into the force multiplication side of things, I just want to talk a little bit about the company I work for, who we are, just to give everybody a bit of background.
Yeah.
Now,
I'll hand things over to you then in that case, and we'll get your slides ready momentarily.
Okay.
Yeah, no, just because we'll get those beamed in just like yourself. They're going to appear for our
Interesting.
audience to watch along. And again, any thoughts, do share it with us whilst you're watching along. But all being well, they will now be ready for everyone to see as well. There they are. They are on
Okay,
the back
got it
wall,
now.
I assure you, Mark. So look, it's over to you now for our
Okay,
final.
perfect. So the title of this is Data as a Force Multiplier. I'm going to start, as I implied, by talking about who we are, Maersk. And this is what most people think Maersk is. Most people think Maersk is a company that owns huge numbers of metal boxes that sit on the back of trucks or trains or ships and move around the world. And of course, to a certain extent, that is true. But in fact, Maersk is way, way more than that. And that's what's so exciting about working in logistics and what makes it such a superb place for a career. What Maersk really is a whole bunch of things. Everything from air cargo, through large shipping vessels, through warehouses, and right down to last mile delivery of goods right to people. So the strapline there is perfectly accurate, from the farm to your fridge, or the warehouse to your wardrobe. And that is what we are. We are the integrator of choice throughout the industry. Now, it is, of course, an industry that has lots of scale, lots of complexity, and by definition is global. And I've just put this here to focus people's minds a little bit on what that means. So if you take that vessel in front of us there, that's what we call a Triple E. It's the biggest vessel we have at this moment in time. A single 40-foot shipping container can hold over 8,000 boxes of shoes, 8,000 shoe boxes. One of these ships can move 64 million pairs of shoes in just one trip. So if you think about that scale, and of course the complexity is every one of those boxes that goes on there, which is what we call the containers, typically goes to a different place, a different organisation. So very, very complex when one of these beasts turns up somewhere. We're also leading the charge, for those of you that understand what's going on in the planet, which hopefully is everybody, we're leading the charge towards decarbonising our fleet all the way to zero is our strapline here. And in fact, about 2 months ago, we launched the world's first carbon neutral vessel, which is fantastic. All of our new vessels are capable of running on carbon neutral fuel, and we take it really very seriously, decarbonising the planet. So the team I run is called Polaris. Very proud to work with my guys. Excellent set of guys and indeed women around the world. And we look after data integration, and you can see, very luckily when we chose the name Polaris, it has got AI in it in the right order. So we were dead lucky there, and we've now highlighted the AI as things move. Question earlier was, how important is data to our organisation? Well, this is kind of how we see data. It's an asset that never depletes, never wears out, and can be used in multiple use cases at zero marginal cost. Now, years ago, and I'm going back maybe 10 years, people used to say data is the new oil. It is not the new oil, because oil, of course, does deplete, does wear out, and can generally only be used in one use case. So this means that we've got this resource that we can leverage, and we can leverage it to what we call force multiply. Now, what is a force multiplier? Well, it's actually a military term originally, and it's about a combination of factors that dramatically increase the effectiveness of an item or a group. So if you have a look on the left-hand side here, a whole ton of people with no data, or you give maybe one person a whole bunch of data, or preferably all of those people a whole bunch of data that's clean, good quality, all that sort of stuff. Suddenly you get however many Supermen or Batmen multiplied by the number of people. And that's really, really important to our organisation, and I would contend to almost every organisation out there. You can really use data to force multiply your people. So the question is, how do you make data a force multiplier? How do you turn Keaton into Batman? Very simple in our opinion. First of all, easy access, set your data free. Okay, right now you've probably got data in silos everywhere, etc. You don't want to be necessarily moving it around, but you don't want to just let it go crazy like the cowboy on the left-hand side. You don't want to be having to chase it down, wrangle it, etc. And this isn't just about physical access. It's about flexible access to reliable data, okay? Your pipelines need to be ready when you say that they will be ready. It's no good saying, yeah, well, we're really flexible with our data, but not quite sure when you'll get it. That won't work. You've got to have reliable pipelines. Your data needs to be of quality. And I like to say, we want to de-wrangle the wranglers. Okay, if you think about it, data scientists historically, and anybody using data really, have spent up to 80% of their time cleaning data rather than creating insights. Now, you know, if you're only spending 20% of your time creating insights, that's a real problem, okay? We want to invert that, move left on the problem, and make sure that by the time it gets to these people, they are able to be super productive and really force multiply them with that data being provided reliably and flexibly. Other thing we're looking for is open standards. Now, why do we say open standards? There's several ways of looking at this. Some people look at open standards as, is it written in an open language? Is the product we use written in an open language? To me, that's less important than knowing that the data itself is stored in an open format. Now, why do I say that? Well, if you consider a pyramid, an app, let's say an app on your phone, how long does that last? Maybe it lasts 2 months before you get a new version. Beneath that, maybe the app itself gets outdated, you change it for another app. But beneath it, your data will live for years and years and years. And it's the same in an organization. I have no idea how long we'll use Dremio for, but I know that the data that Dremio is currently interrogating will live in our organization for years and years and years. So it's important to avoid the data being locked into any form of proprietary format. If you do that, not a smart thing to do because you'll end up with problems when you want to move forward. So we look for standards that we can get access to without paying for premium features. I don't want to pay extra if I want to use a particular feature of something. I want it all to be there, all to be free, all to be open. And we also, for that reason, tend to look for standards where there are a number of contributors to that standard. Fairly simple. Look at the repo, see who's contributing, go for the ones that start to have adoption. On the screen here, I've just put up a few of those standards that we're looking at and we're starting to adopt. The next thing in making your data a force multiplier is definitely speed. Now, speed comes in many forms. Top of the screen, there's a cheetah and a sloth. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean the sloth is less valid than the cheetah, unless you're particularly in a sprint race, of course. But it means that they have different requirements. So are our users. They have different requirements. Depending on what you're doing, what the nature of your job is, you might need data absolutely instantly. Let's say you're trading oil or you're wanting to get an urgent answer to a customer. Or maybe you're doing the quarterly accounts. Maybe you don't need that data to be instant. Maybe an hour behind or even as at close of business yesterday is perfectly acceptable to you. But the key thing is with speed is you've got to give data to people in the right time for their job. And you need to make sure that that data, again, coming back to what we said earlier, is absolutely accurate. Because if you put it into a model, you put it into AI, it doesn't matter what you do with data. If it's bad data, it's not going to happen. Classically, what we find with our users is they consistently say, give me data real time. But what is real time? Again, we have to come back to that. If you consider, for example, some of our vessels move, let's say, meat from Argentina to the UK. Now, you might think, well, it takes a couple of weeks for the vessel to get there. What do you need to know other than where the vessel is? But think about what happens. That meat is primarily frozen. It sits in what's called a reefer container, and that container keeps it frozen. So that container needs to send a little ping out to say, my temperature's good, my oil's working, there's no problems with the fans, etc., etc. So again, vast amounts of data, and we need to collect that data quite quickly in order that things work in the way that they do. Nobody wants to turn up to the docks with a lorry and collect 30 tons of meat that's been spoilt because it went off. So that's speed. Now, also, this is a real picture of our financial director. We want low cost. This is what we're looking for. Why are we looking for low cost? Not because we think low cost is necessarily perfect. What we're actually looking for is an intersection of good, fast, cheap, quality, the whole thing. It's almost a unicorn sitting right in the middle of that Venn diagram on the left-hand side there. But we think it's there. We think that Venn diagram can be achieved. We think we can find the unicorn. And we think we're pretty close to having found that unicorn, not just in Dremio, but across the whole organisation that we're doing now. The whole organisation we're working with is beginning to understand the importance of cost, the importance of good, fast, cheap software. But at the same time, do not compromise on reliability. If you do that, it's going to be in deep trouble. So moving on, I'm going to come back again. Here's the theme, high quality. I've chucked up an image here of high-res image and a low-res image. Now, if you look at the right-hand side there, sure, you can still see it's a flower of some sort. I have to say, I'm not a botanist or whatever, so I've got no idea what type of flower it is. It's purple, though. If you want to project something from that low-res image, much harder than the high-res image. If you zoom in, you can see it's kind of pixelated, etc. So it is with your data. We want people to be able to get down to the right granularity for their data. Granularity wins for us pretty much at every level, because the lower level of granularity you can go to, and you don't have to start there, the lower level of granularity you can go to, the better the resolution is on your image of that data, the better the resolution can be when you're doing that, particularly in something like machine learning. What we are classically doing with machine learning now is putting low-level data into a model, modeling that low-level data and looking to see what comes out from that granular data. And I think something that was alluded to in the panel was, the vast amount of data now makes it super hard for a human being to understand it. Well, guess what? That's the machine in machine learning. Put the data in there, chuck it through the system, see what comes out, refine, rinse and repeat, and do that fast. And that again is a force multiplier. We had a use case this week. I can't say the sums of money involved, but very significant, where one of my guys took some data about landing vessels that were coming in with containers, and was just predicting how they would be picked up. Would they be picked up by a truck? Would they go on a train? What type of truck, etc. Again, I can't give the exact numbers, but let's say it's significant seven-figure numbers for a model that took the guy from high-quality data less than 2 weeks, end to end, to build. Fantastic result. Kudos to Julian if you're watching. If you're not, I'll ring you tomorrow to ask why you're not watching, but that's another story. High-quality data, again, delivering results. So how is it acting as a force multiplier for Maersk? Well, there's 4 examples here, and this is the sort of thing that we would speak to our customers about. We're building efficiencies and we're saving costs, and it's keeping not just our business competitive, but their business competitive. We are a partnership with our businesses. It's an overused phrase, but we really are. The sort of things that we do, bringing visibility to our customers' supply chains, helping them deal with the complexities. We all saw during the pandemic exactly what happens when supply chains go bad, right? You can't get even the basics, let alone a VW car or whatever, because parts aren't there, things aren't there. So we're actually providing the data that helps people with their contingencies, with their resilience, and lets them respond to any market interruption better. We also want to make sure that all of our partners are in complete control of their cargo, start to finish, so we can give them that integrated supply chain from the factory right the way through to the end user. Very, very important. And that level of transparency without data, hey, it does not exist. You don't want to be sending, like the old days, faxes and emails to see what's going on. You want to go to your visibility port, see what's happening. And then finally, giving them the data trails that help them plan their cargo movement better. And the same rules apply, I would contend, no matter what business you're in. Give people those data trails. Be open with it. Start to say to people, we will open up your data that you own from our systems to you. Make it free. Let that data roam freely in a highly controlled manner. And I know that sounds like it's an oxymoron, but you can have freely roaming data, highly controlled, to the right people. And what's the exciting thing? The exciting thing for me, about my role and about data, though I'm an old guy now, we are just getting started. I can't tell you how pumped I am that I'm a believer in the singularity. We're just getting started here. This is the dawn of a new era, generative AI, and what that is going to bring to data and to data solutions. And the way that I'm seeing it plugged into Dremio is super exciting. It really is. The plans that are being made, what's going to be delivered. I mean, it's just super happy. I'm not going to retire just yet. Again, if my boss is watching, not just yet. Won't be too long with a bit of luck though. And in all of this, what's the other thing that helps us use data as a force multiplier? Well, I'm going to say this, it's teamwork. And it's not just an internal team. Guys you see on screen in the middle, Batman, that's any one of our guys. We've turned them into superheroes thanks to this. And also, it's the extended team, the team at Dremio. Right-hand side, I've put Sendur in there. He really is Robin to our Batman. If we need something very approachable, really pumping out exciting things for our organisation and listening to new features, a transformational CEO, in my opinion. On the left-hand side there is Batgirl. Apologies, Jamie, I couldn't find another Bat person who was of the right gender, so apologies. Get a nice sales guy as well. Get that relationship there, because they'll know when you're being serious and you need stuff doing and when you're not. It's about the extended team. So kind of that's it. I'm a little bit early, but that's not a problem. For those of you that know, we all know what time of the year it is, right? This is obviously Christmas, but I just wanted to, if I can, take 1 minute personally to say, I'm finishing early. It'll be wrapped up in a second. When you get off of this, you'll have a few minutes free that you probably have set aside for this call. Do yourself a favour, do somebody else a favour, pick the phone up to somebody you love but you haven't called for a little while, and just let them know that you're there and you love them. Believe me, it'll make a difference. And I apologise if that's a little bit soft, but it's really important at this time of the year as much as any other. So on that, thank you very much for your time.
There we go. Mark, thank you very much indeed for delivering what is our final keynote as part of the Dremio showcase. Some important messages in there, of course, and thoughts. And a couple of questions have come in from our audience. If you're open to just a few more minutes of your time. So first one that came in a few minutes ago, in fact, I'm just going to read it here verbatim from our audience member. They asked, what are some data and AI capabilities that rail or shipping terminals perhaps need to look at improve for global logistics?
Rail and shipping terminals. So I can talk about shipping terminals, probably more so than rail. So if you're a shipping terminal, when a vessel unloads, for example, think about what's going to happen to that cargo when it comes off. So a few months ago, we were looking at terminals and the containers had just been bought off and put anywhere, okay, which means you have to start moving things around within a terminal. If you take a model and can accurately predict whether that is leaving by road or rail or when it's likely to be picked up, you can put them in the right places. Saves a lot of time, a lot of money, cuts a lot of carbon. Fairly simple.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. I think we've got a couple more trickling through, so we'll allow for that in just a moment. But I'm curious, just in simple terms, really, is AI adoption, looking ahead to 2024, is that going to be the differentiator between the so-called leaders and the laggards? Is that going to be the one?
I think it depends on how you adopt it, right? It's like anything else. I think there are always people who want to be on the leading edge, but you want to take great care you're not on the bleeding edge. It's a very fine line. It's a very fine line. So I think you need to democratize it, build the skills everywhere. For example, if you take the term AI engineer, what is an AI engineer? I think for me, everybody needs to be an AI engineer. Avoid those type of job titles, that sort of thing, because it makes people think in a certain way. If you're an AI engineer, I'm only going to do AI, it may not be the right solution for that problem. I think it will be one of the differentiators that's out there, but not necessarily the differentiator. But the application of it will be the differentiator, absolutely, in my opinion.
And if it's Oh, I think we can hear possibly Carl in our ears telling us that we do have a question that's come through from one of our audience members. So let's have a look at this and whether they're going to join us in person or if it's a question to ask. It's a question to ask for you. So our audience member wants to know this. What is the best approach to managing legacy data and legacy systems? We know that's a problem for lots of organisations. So let's think about that for a moment. I'm assuming that's something you've had to contend with.
Yeah, we've got
Maersk, right?
Everybody's got huge amounts of legacy. So I think the way that we're dealing with it is we're using a technique called facading. So we're building a virtual layer, actually using Dremio, a virtual layer on top of data sets that come from old systems. We then write everything against that virtual layer, and as we take the legacy systems and re-engineer them, that means we can unplug those data sets from beneath that virtual layer without disrupting the user. So I think it's really important to think about what's the end use of it, number one. It's empowering the users. And then secondly, within that, I think it's about making sure that you use the right techniques initially to get that data out. So we've got, for example, a whole bunch of legacy systems now that are having Kafka put on top of them. So they're starting to event data out, even though they're legacy systems. And then again, Kafka becomes the facade. We'll unplug that legacy solution, plug in the new solution, and it'll be seamless for the user. And for me, that's a seamless experience is really what we want our users to have. We don't want disruption.
Yeah, that's not the easiest of questions to answer, but some great advice for folks here today. And we've got one more, if you're, we'll squeeze it in.
The door's locked, so I can't get out anyway.
No, you're not leaving here anyway, so we're just going to keep it rolling.
Yeah, I'm happy, yeah.
One final question then. To what extent are you using process mining or process analytics as a way of improving operations? What are your thoughts there?
Look, that's not in my area, but I know we've done it and it's nascent in some areas. I think the whole thing with process analytics, from what I'm perceiving is a question of, do you want to mine processes that may themselves be inherently bad and just learn about them and refine a bad process? There may well be some incredible insights in there. Once you get that insight, what do you do with it? Do you automate it, or do you say, actually maybe there's a better process to use altogether? So it's not my area of expertise, but that's the way I see it. I think you're about to see a whole series of use cases come up where the changes that can be made to processes will be so transformational that you won't even have time to mine them before people have done it on their desktop themselves.
Wow. Yeah, as I said earlier, it's fascinating just how fast things have moved in just the 12 months to date.
It's incredible.
And it's amazing where we might be December next year. But that does bring us almost to time here as part of our session. Just finally, how can our audience connect with you after today?
Just hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll answer most messages unless you're a salesperson, in which case I will not answer your message. I'll just say, please call me back another day. But other than that, hit me up on LinkedIn, no problem at all.
Fantastic. Mark, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Indeed. If you stay put for just a moment, that was our final content session of this Dremio showcase. So there we go, folks. Thank you very much for watching along. I'm going to thank our speakers, of course, and our contributors for joining us here in person today. Of course, Sendur from Dremio, Mike from Intelligent Business Strategies, and Mark, who we just heard from Maersk. And my thanks to you, folks, for watching along and interacting in our chat section. It's been great to see some of your questions coming through and your comments and to reflect those live here as part of this event. It's been a fascinating insight, isn't it, into the world of data lakehouse architecture. We've heard about some of the trends that define 2023, and we've heard about some predictions for the year ahead. I hope you've enjoyed watching along. I hope you've enjoyed being part of this Dremio Showcase event, and I hope to see you at another one very soon. Thanks for watching along. Bye-bye.